Right, this is a short presentation which directs the preparation for the High School Certificate Advanced English Module B, the critical study of text. And in this case, the focus will be on poetry and the prescribed poems of William Butler Yeats. I intend to look at the rubric for the question mandated by the Board of Studies. I want to spend a bit of time exploring past questions, getting an idea of patterns and types of questions that could potentially be asked, and I will also be looking at approaches to answering the question and useful pointers for you to add into your response to ensure that it lifts from the ordinary to the extraordinary. So what do we need to do to write a brilliant essay for Module B? The Board of Studies specifically wants all students to think deeply and critically about their chosen text. It is taken for granted that you will know all the poems and make some sort of connection with each poem. Invariably, students will try to take a shortcut, and you could be caught out when a specific poem is being asked for in the question to be used as reference for your response. This was done in 2014 and 2011. You need to know all the poems. You need to be able to apply those poems to past questions, and if you can do that, you should be able to present a reasonable response. An informed personal response comes with a deep understanding of all the poems. To understand Yeats's poems fully, there needs to be some understanding of context, and in Yeats's case, among many contextual elements that we need to think about, Yeats needs to be known as a public and private person. He wrote poetry for his public, but he also explored his personal engagement with the world privately, and this can be seen in his poetry, in all his poems. Context pointers need to be considered of many and varied, but try to have some sort of working knowledge of Yeats's relationship with Lady Gregory, certainly Yeats's unrequited love for Maud Gonne, and the very rich and deep spiritual exploration that Yeats did, together with Yeats's awareness of Irish nationalism and Irish history, needs to be understood. Once the poems are fully comprehended, the context is understood, the notion of textual integrity can then be addressed. This idea of textual integrity is a very worrying phrase to try to explore. I presume textual integrity had a lot to do with the universality of meaning, but I went to the Board of Studies and found this particular slide that was useful in explaining the idea of textual integrity as far as the Board of Studies is concerned. As you can see, it's not an easy phrase to understand, but the definition above comes from the syllabus, and the explanation focuses on the notion of unity or fidelity. That is, the way Yeats's poems can be understood as coherent and communicating ideas using the form, in this case poetry, to engage with the power of language that has some meaning and value to the responder. The power of language and the accessible meaning that's associated with text is critical in this idea of textual integrity. So remember, poetry is the form, and it's the language that's been used in the poetry, providing the meaning and the value is important to understand this idea of textual integrity. All right, let's look at a generic question, very general question, basic question that explores the idea of life and death and the enduring nature of Yeats's poetry. So the ideas are important. So there'll be references to context, but I think when you consider the idea of textual integrity, the ideas in Yeats's poetry need to be understood and explored. We need to extrapolate the driving point in this particular question, and in this case it's the challenges of life and death. So when we think about the idea of life and death, obviously that notion of mortality that's evident in Yeats's poetry. We see here a movement in this response from the general comment about poetry in that first line, okay, with that very small asterisk one there that you can see, a very general comment about poetry, to Yeats's more specific connection to the antinomies, the idea of life and death, youth and ageing, the present and the past, memories and reality can all be alluded to through the succinct reference to antinomies. This needs to be explained further with thesis points in your body paragraph to support your thesis statement that's being established here in the opening paragraph. The first sentence is a simple engagement with the question. The second sentence links to the focus poems that you are going to explore, and the third sentence there makes an informed personal engagement with the question, and the poetry with the final sentence mentioning the important connection to textual integrity. So you've got the first general comment, the second connection to the poems you're going to explore, then you make the connection to the antinomies, and obviously that notion of textual integrity needs to somehow be woven into the response. Okay, so that's what you need to do with the introduction, and it does mirror a similar sort of introduction for the other modules as well. A general statement, specific engagement, and then you need to drill down further. Okay, so over to you. Okay, the question, poets that explore the challenges of life and death are often those whose works endure throughout the generations. I want you to write an introduction to engage with the above question. Think about writing that general statement that I've just been alluding to, this general statement that connects with the module you are studying, critical study of text in this particular case. If you're doing Module C, a general statement about the representational elements of text, and then you go to the art of travel. And certainly the comparative study of text with Module A. Okay, so every module have this general statement about poetry, and you write this general statement to engage with the question. Then you have your thesis statement that connects specifically with the question. Okay, so that's the important part where you're starting to demonstrate your knowledge of the content required to answer the question. So you've got to think about this. One, engagement with your argument. What is going to be the nub, the summary of the approach that you're going to take to engage with that question? That should be the second sentence. So try and write this second sentence that is focusing on answering the question. Once you have written that general statement, you then have that specific engagement through the thesis statement. Okay, and obviously you then need to go to the poems that you're going to use to answer the question, so you should mention the two poems. But this is where I keep coming back to this notion of textual integrity, come back to textual integrity to try to explain how poetry is important, the meaning and value that you get from poetry needs to be evidenced in your particular response. Think about the universality of the human condition that's communicated through navigating life and understanding one's own mortality. Poetry can distill this dialectic through the power of language. So when establishing a thesis statement, focus on Yeats's constant desire to understand life and, when aged, his own mortality. A strong thesis statement will underpin good thesis points in your body paragraphs and provide a strong underpinning for your argument. So try to write that 4 points that I wanted you to cover, 4 sentences that you need to cover in the introduction. Once you've got something roughly written down and you've done that with past questions, you're going to be well prepared to then use the thesis statement to develop your body paragraph for the rest of the response. So An example of a body paragraph is on this particular slide. Here we have an example of that body paragraph where we've got the topic sentence is flagging to us this idea of the thesis point that will be developed further in the paragraph. So if you understand how paragraphs work and the importance of a topic sentence, that is the thesis point that you need to ensure drives your argument. Once the topic sentence flags that point of view, you need to then get evidence from the text to support the topic sentence that you've made. So obviously, topic sentence then can be teased out into connecting to evidence from the text. You must have evidence. Don't just talk generally about a poem. Have that grounding in specific lines or words in the poem itself to support your thesis statement. The expectation is that the evidence is shown in a quotation to focus the connection with text. Once the textual connection is made, there needs to be an explanation, an analysis of how the quotation works in communicating the thesis point. This corresponds with the acronym PEAL, or also known as TEAL. P for thesis point, E for evidence, A for analysis, and L for link. T for topic sentence, whatever. So both acronyms work the same way. There are a range of different acronyms you can use to write your body paragraph, but this is a basic one that I have used with considerable success, and I want to try and keep it as simple as possible, because set up your argument with the thesis point, provide the evidence, do the analysis, and link it back to the question. You're heading in the right direction. In the paragraph above, we have a thesis point, but there are two poems mentioned with quotations to explain the point about the challenge of life being ageing in wild swans. And this can be seen through the quotes, "Brilliant creature," and "Come upon me," linking the catalyst for the reflection, the individual as in me, the personal pronoun, and the ageing coming to the swans, and how those coming back to seeing those swans has provided an opportunity for that reflection. In Among School Children, "Hollow of cheek as though it drank the wind and took a mess of shadows for its meat," capture the mood of the transience of age by personifying the actual visage of the children, the way the children actually look. The children trigger a thought process about ageing and obviously mortality being a problem that Yeats needs to come to terms with. Okay, he was uncomfortable growing old. He was uncomfortable with death. The analysis of the quotations mentions personification, juxtaposition, metaphor and alliteration to explain the discomfort triggered by the awareness of youth, and furthermore the connection with age and mortality. And as the question suggests, the challenges of life and death, coming to terms with death, coming to terms with life. Now it's your turn to try to write one body paragraph driven by the thesis statement you have established in your introductory paragraph. Okay, I'm using this acronym PEAL. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is establish that thesis point. So you write down the thesis point that aligns with the explanation of your thesis statement. Okay, you normally have 2 or 3 body paragraphs, so you need 2 or 3 body thesis points to support your thesis statement established in the introduction. This is the topic sentence that flags your body paragraph. Remember that the E is the example that you're going to use. The E is the evidence that you are using the actual poem, so usually a quotation would be useful. And once you've established that, you then have to provide the A, the analysis. So you've got a sentence for the thesis point, the P, the E for the evidence, the example you're going to use. The A is the analysis, another sentence at least for that. And then you have the L at the end to link to your thesis statement. Okay, so hopefully you've got those 4 sentences written, at least 4 sentences to demonstrate your engagement with that particular question. That then leads us to the concluding paragraph. where you have a thumbnail summary of what you have argued or responded to in your final or concluding paragraph. Try to avoid restating the question. Try to write a concluding paragraph that is shown here that mentions the universality and the notion of textual integrity coming through again. So there's a reference in the first paragraph and a reference in the last paragraph to textual integrity. So this is the discriminating point between the ordinary and the extraordinary, an awareness of textual integrity. 2014-2013 questions are here on the slide. You notice that there's a specific reference to the Wild Swans at Coole in 2014 and one other poem set for study. Obviously, if you know all of the poems set for study, you can draw upon the most complementary poem for Wild Swans at Coole that refer to age, ageing, mortality. Second Coming possibly doesn't work as well. You can make it work, but obviously this question teases out the people that do know their stuff. 2013, a little bit more manageable, focusing on time and place and the search for truth. Searching for truth is once again connected to textual integrity. 2011, we have this reference to among school children. The actual last stanza was given to you in the exam, so you could use it if you weren't ready for this particular question. Certainly it's a long poem and you can sort of drill down further using that references in the exam to the last stanza, but you obviously need a good knowledge of the rest of the poem to be able to explain this notion of mortality and the private and the personal aspects of Yeats. All right, thank you very much. I hope that this has been helpful for you, and know your poems well, be aware of textual integrity, and certainly think about looking at past papers to get the pattern of the questions, and be aware of the rubric, and hopefully you'll be well prepared for your HSC. Good luck and enjoy.